So I'm joined by Tony Diver, the political correspondent at The Telegraph. Welcome to the programme, Tony. I suppose the first question to ask is, how deep is Boris Johnson in trouble? We're hearing reports of letters potentially going in to the 1922 committee chairman. Is there a realistic prospect that Boris Johnson may not be Prime Minister this time next year?
Well, yes, you're right. I mean, there are Tory MPs who are talking about sending in their letters to Sir Graham Brady, and we know that if that gets to 55 letters, if 55 Tory MPs say that Boris Johnson should go, then it triggers a Tory leadership contest. So that will be something that's playing on the Prime Minister's mind. We think at the moment there are probably not that many MPs who are in that place just yet. I think that perhaps there are some MPs who are willing to give him another chance in the new year. The thing is, it's very difficult to know exactly how many letters have gone in because the number isn't public. And Sir Graham, who is the only person who really knows how many Tory MPs have said this, will never discuss the number of letters that have gone in. But I think as Tory MPs start talking to the newspapers and saying, I think it's getting closer and closer. I spoke to someone yesterday who said they were thinking of sending in their letter this week. That certainly feels like it's in dangerous territory for the Prime Minister, doesn't it? You never want to be in the position where people are on your own side are calling for your resignation.
For the last 2 months, really, we've been hearing Tory MPs use this phrase that they want to see the Prime Minister get a grip, that they want potentially some personnel changes in number 10. And you've just said that really another chance may well be given to the Prime Minister. What does he need to do? How does he need to use that chance? What changes does he need to deliver to win back the confidence of his members of Parliament?
Well, the frustration for a lot of these MPs, a lot of them who are against him at the moment, are some of these red wall MPs who owe their seats really to Boris Johnson, who they relied on him at the 2019 election to win their seats. They're now turning on him and saying that he's not listening to them. And this is the criticism that they make again and again. They say that people in the Prime Minister's top team in Downing Street, people like Dan Rosenfield as Chief of Staff, are not in touch with the backbenches. And as Prime Minister, you need to have people in your team, either your political secretary or someone in your staff, who listens to the backbenches, who says, we hear your concerns about the direction of travel in number 10 at the moment, the sorts of things Lord Frost resigned over on Saturday night, and we're happy to discuss them with you and make some changes. And the constant refrain that comes back is people like Dan Rosenfield don't listen to the backbenches, and that's a concern for them.
Is this mostly a COVID issue? I mean, we know that the Conservative backbenches are very much sceptical of going further. I mean, COVID passports was a vote that incited a 100-strong rebellion in Parliament, the kind of rebellions that we were used to seeing in Theresa May's years as Prime Minister, which is quite extraordinary given that that's probably the lightest touch intervention that one could possibly imagine around Christmas. If the Prime Minister today or later this week decides to go further with restrictions, is that only going to strengthen those disagreements? Is that going to grow the gulf between the backbenches and the leadership of the Tory Party? Or are there other issues here than COVID that matter?
I think COVID is the flashpoint, isn't it? I mean, there are issues that have been controversial on the backbenches over the last few months. The rise in national insurance, for instance, and various other policy U-turns that the government's made. There are some Tory backbenchers who are worried about the government's green agenda. They say that that's something that's putting them off number 10 at the moment. So there have been other issues, but you always expect these issues to come up during the course of a government. Of course, you have disagreements between the broad church of the Conservative Party, but it feels like the COVID regulations are the real flashpoint here, the straw that's broken the camel's back. So I think if we do see that, when we know that ministers were discussing it yesterday and they're discussing it again today, this prospect of bringing Parliament back from its Christmas recess, maybe on Wednesday, maybe later, to bring in more legal restrictions, that's not just guidance, but actually, telling people in law that they can't do things, that's likely to incite an even bigger rebellion than the one we had the other day. And although the measures may well go through Parliament anyway, because they'll have the support of Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, Boris could be looking at 130, 150 Tory rebels, which starts to look like a pretty untenable chunk of his own party against him.
One cabinet resignation. Could it be that if there are further restrictions, further legal restrictions rather than just guidance coming this week, might we see another cabinet resignation? And who are the names that may well be in and amongst that sort of mix?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to say, isn't it? Because at least in public, these cabinet ministers always profess loyalty to the Prime Minister. We know that there are some people who've expressed reservations about even Plan B, and so we can sort of intuit from that Plan C would be a problem for them as well. People like Liz Truss, Kwasi Kwarteng, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we hear that Rishi's not hugely pro more restrictions either. So there are some big hitters basically in the cabinet who are concerned about this stuff. Now, whether or not they would choose to resign and what exactly the red line would be, whether it would be a full lockdown or more restrictions or whatever, we don't really know. Lord Frost was obviously on the more extreme end, which is why he's gone sooner. But perhaps you'd expect that Boris Johnson won't actually push his cabinet into restrictions, which is going to make more of them resign. I mean, that would make his position a lot worse, wouldn't it? That would make him look in a real position of weakness. If someone like Liz Truss, for instance, decided to resign, then someone who's very popular with the party, I think that would make him look very weak.
Well, it will be a very, very interesting week. Of course, we're seeing some reports that there's a cabinet meeting at 2 p.m. today. Whether that decides on new restrictions or not, it will be fascinating to watch. I'm sure you'll keep your eyes peeled to that. But for now, Tony, thank you very much for joining us this morning, or this afternoon even, on The Briefing on GB News. Now, the Conservative Party installed